What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am stoked to have another conversation with Nathan Everson. If you guys ever listen to the Delegate That podcast, another podcast I have going on, I've already chatted with Nathan over there. Really looking forward to diving in a little bit more on this side of the house. So Nathan, if you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and tell us about your business.
Yeah. Hey, Adam. It's good to have the second conversation. I feel like we're old friends already.
There we go.
Um, so about myself, I am 42. I grew up in northwestern North Dakota in a small town called Williston. It's if you've heard of the Bakken oil boom, that's kind of ground zero for where the oil boom is. And I always half joke that there's really two career paths. If you grew up in Williston, you're either a farmer or you work in the oil industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was on the latter half. My dad was in the oil and gas industry. My brother-in-laws, everyone related to me, grandparents, everyone kind of grew up with oil and gas running through our veins, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it wasn't a life that I wanted to live. It's pretty rough, tough, can be crude,
Mm-hmm.
rude, you know, uh, lots of hard drinking and just a hard lifestyle to live in general. Hard workers, great guys. But when I was 18, I decided to go to college, which was also kind of a departure. Neither of my parents went to college, so I was kind of forging a path there. I don't think any of my grandparents went to college either, so um, I went, became a commercial pilot, went through a 4-year university program at University of North Dakota. Um, After I graduated, by that point I was 22. I'd lived in North Dakota my entire life, and I just needed to, spread the proverbial wings. So I was putting in job
Uh-huh.
applications to like Alaska, Hawaii, New York, Florida. I just wanted to go as far as possible. I ended up taking a job flight instructing in Santa Monica, California, basically LA area. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Lived out there for a couple of years. We can talk about that later if you want. Total culture shock for a kid from
No
North
joke.
Dakota. Um, it was awesome. Great few years of my life. Um, from there, I moved out to Colorado. I was flying for a guy in Aspen, and while I was out there, I kind of reconnected with an old girl that I knew from high school. So I was living in Aspen, she lived in Denver. Fast forward now, that was coming up on 18 years ago, and we've been married for 10 of them. And so that kind of started the next phase of my life. We've now, as of 2 weeks ago, just had our fourth child. So we've got a 9-year-old boy,
Woohoo!
yeah, 7-year-old girl, 3-year-old girl, and a 2-week-old girl. So full house, full hearts, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to navigate biz and dad life.
Yeah, no joke, right?
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the way that life kind of throws things at you and how things come up. I'm very curious. It's a high school, an old girl from high school, we'll say,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
She is in Denver at the time, and you're in Aspen. What brought her to Denver? So I understand what brought you to Aspen because you mentioned that, but how did she end up in Denver? That's not exactly right next door to Williston, North Dakota.
Yeah, so her dad, he was in the military, and then from
Mm.
there, so she was born in Austin, Texas. The air base in Austin shut down while her dad was in the military, so he transferred. It's still government, but he went to work for the FAA, and that's what took him
Hmm.
to North Dakota. And then from there, once my wife graduated high school, her dad took another transfer down to the Denver area with
Okay.
the FAA. So once she graduated college, she just moved down to Denver to be closer to her parents. Um, so she was living there. I was living in Aspen, and fortunately, as a pilot, it's like a 30-minute commute for me to just jump in the plane,
Hmm.
fly over the mountains, and um, so that was kind of how I hooked her. On one of our very first dates, I put her in the plane. We flew to Aspen. When we got to Aspen, like I had a sleigh drawn or a horse-drawn sleigh ride up into the mountains
Dang.
to a restaurant, and she's like, "Dude, it's kind of hard to top that. You set the bar pretty high, and it's been all downhill from there."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Date number two was at Taco Bell. That's
yeah, exactly. Blew the budget on the first one.
and you guys took an Uber to get there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's funny.
Uh,
So what? Tell me a little bit about your business as well. Introduce us to what that looks like for you.
yeah, so my current business is called Blacktail Companies. So like a lot of real estate guys, we have, different, I would say, arms of the business, but primarily it's a real estate investment firm. So we focus in industrial real estate, kind of larger buildings, anywhere from 20 up to 200,000 square feet buildings is what our current portfolio consists of.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, we buy the buildings. We've developed some, but mostly just buy existing buildings, put tenants in place. Sometimes there are buildings with existing tenants, we're just effectively buying a lease. Other times we're buying buildings that need a bunch of work put into them, where, similar to what the multifamily guys do, come in, fix them up, you force a bunch of equity into it, and yeah. So then
Okay.
we manage them for the long term. We don't really flip. I think in the last 13 years, I believe I've sold three buildings. So normally when we buy and hold, kind of, and
Wow.
manage them like we're going to own them forever. So yeah.
Hey, everybody, wanted to step in to discuss something. If you're anything like me, you've ran into some time in your business where you feel a little overwhelmed with some of the mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time. You're working more in the business than you are on the business, right? If that's you and you're hearing this and you're saying, boy, it is time to reclaim some of my schedule back, to focus on what truly matters. You want to get time back with elite remote talent with zero time zone hassle. Check out one of my partners that I just recently partnered up with, BizDad&x.com/Adam is where you go to check these folks out. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus more on the $1,000 an hour tasks, the things that are really transforming your business. Get rid of some of those transactional things and do some more of the transformational inside of your business. So again, schedule your free strategy call at wisevas.com/Adam. Wise, WISEVAS.com/Adam. Again, let's get rid of some of those transactional tasks and move them into transformational tasks. It's been a phenomenal team to work with. I really look forward to sharing them with you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to discuss with you what's going on as well. But again, wisevas.com/Adam. Thank you very much. And now back to the episode. No, I think it's one of those things that when you find your niche and you know what you like, it doesn't matter how sexy it is or what it looks like or what any of the stuff is. Like, if you listen to anything like what Cody Sanchez talks about, or a lot of the other people who are talking about buying businesses, like you buy some of those small businesses that nobody thinks about. I've got a buddy of mine that reached out to me and was like, hey, this business, it might be coming up for sale. They fix and maintain coffee shops, coffee machines. And I was like, who'd have thought a business that fixes and maintains coffee machines, right? But of course they have those because those need to be done, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's sexy or not. It sounds like it's rather successful. So you mentioned the industrial side of the house not being all that sexy, and I want to push back on that a little bit because like sexy only sells in magazines, right? That's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for a business that makes a lot of sense, that brings in money, that provides generational wealth, that's able to be managed for the lifestyle that you want. And I've talked to a lot of people about like building their business around their lifestyle rather than their lifestyle around their business. So if you can a real sexy business kind of implies that you need to be there all the time and do all these things, where if you could just manage the property, set it up a business that makes sense, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's sexy or not. It's similar to like the Cody Sanchez's and all those out there talking about, buying businesses, like buy that boring business around the corner. Like one of my friends, because I was chatting with him about wanting to buy more businesses. He has a friend that's selling a coffee machine cleaning and maintenance company. They go around all the coffee shops and maintain all of that. I was like, well, never would have thought about that as a business, but what do you know? Like everybody that owns a coffee shop needs that. They need someone to be able to come and fix it. So not sexy, right. But if it brings in good revenue, then it doesn't matter how sexy it is. So I love it. What is the size of your portfolio you have right now? How many? You measure it by the square foot by the sounds of things. So what size are you looking at right now for your current portfolio?
Yeah, so the current total, we're just under 1 million square feet. I think we have about 968,000 roughly,
Wow.
somewhere in that square
What
footage.
the heck are you doing? Go buy the other 30, the other 32,000 and get yourself to 1 million.
I'm working on it, man. Check back in a month.
Yeah, well, you're on vacation. You're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
So, no, it goes back to the building your business around your life. So I love it. So that sounds phenomenal. And I, one other comment that I wanted to make about what you said, you had talked about, only selling 3 of your properties over that time. And I was like, I wish, I've sold hundreds of doors of apartments to the point where I've gotten rid of almost basically my entire real estate portfolio. I own, a couple business things now, but I wish that I never sold a single one of them, So here I am listening to you saying that you only sold 3 of them, and I want to smack myself in the face and go, why did you do that? Like, but I want to kind of understand a little bit about, are you raising capital for these deals, or is this all kind of in-house? You've built it over time to where it's all just you and your partners?
I would say both. So, kind of the first iteration of the company was just my family and I. So I mentioned my dad was in. Do you want the longish version?
Sure. We've got time.
So
it's
my
a long
dad,
podcast.
yeah, my dad was in the oil and gas industry. He had his own company, started in 1981, which was impeccable timing because I think the oil busted in North Dakota around 1984. So he had a tough go for quite a few years. He bought a building in I want to say around 93. I could be wrong. Somewhere in the early to mid 90s there. It was smaller, maybe 14,000 square feet. Anyways, and then in 2000 or 2001, him and my mom, like they're both pretty conservative, right? Zero debt type mentality. And they bought an investment property on the other side of town in Williston, and they paid like $100,000 for this little 6,000 square foot building. And to them, that was like they were putting their neck way out there, right? So fast forward to 2011, and oil had turned around. We were back in another oil boom, and my dad's company had grown quite a bit. I think at that time he had somewhere between 80 and 100 employees. He ended up selling his company to another competitor, like a private equity backed deal. And at that point, him and my mom were just like, hey, we're gonna kind of retire. We want you kids to come in and manage the real estate. Well, the real estate at that time
Yeah.
composed of the shop that he was operating out of, that one small investment property, and then they had, I want to say, six like little homes that they were renting out to some of my dad's employees. So a couple of trailer houses, a condo, a townhome. And they're like, you guys, you kids figure out what you want to do with this, and it can be a little bit of passive income for you. And um, so that was kind of how our real estate, company started. It was, I would say, pretty accidental because,
Mm-hmm.
my parents aren't real estate investors. In fact, if you asked them, just some of the simplest real estate terms that we talk about, to this day, they wouldn't like be able to tell you
Yeah.
what that is. So it was, good timing and just good business sense. My dad's a great businessman. Um, anyways, so we took right away, like it was pretty apparent within the first couple of months after, my brother had to kick out a few former employees and they're like threatening him with guns and stuff. It's like, okay, we
Love that.
gotta get rid of all these houses. We don't want to be in residential. So we sold all of those, six houses. That gave us a little bit of seed capital. I turned that and we bought our first industrial building that I purchased, since we took over. Bought that, and then just over the next 8 years after that, we would, we had a lot of cash flow coming in just from those three industrial buildings that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would take that, roll it in another one, take that, roll it in another one. We never levered up on debt or anything like that. And yeah, and so from probably 2012 to I think 2020, everything was just within our family. And I wasn't even at that time, I wasn't working on it full time. I had a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant business. I had 7 restaurants. I started with one, I built it up to 7 restaurants, and I was running those. And at the same time, kind of as a, you know, pet project, working on this real estate. Well, that started turning into more and more of a portfolio that consumed a lot of my time. Um, so in 2020, then some of my siblings and my parents are like, hey, this is, it's growing quite a bit. We want to throttle back like the pace that we're growing the company, and just let's pay down some of the debt and, cool it for a little bit. And I was like, what? Like, I'm finally getting good at doing
Yeah.
this. I'm learning all this. I've hired a couple of people to help me, and now we're going to like slow down. So I basically took the same exact concept that I was doing with my family and just went out and started finding, you know, I don't even know if you'd call them investors. They're equity partners. I love them all like family. They're
Mm-hmm.
everyone. I know them well. I won't take money from anyone, no matter how rich they are, if I don't like really enjoy them as a human, if I think they're a
Yeah.
good person. So with that model now, between them and my family, we've really accelerated the growth over the last 5 years. So same type of deal though. I go out, we find a property, put it under contract, and then I'll go to my family and our existing partners first and say, hey guys, here's the deal. We give them a little 3-page summary. Do you want to join in on this? If they do, great. If not, then we've got another group of about 100 people that I know that have, over time, having coffee or lunch with them or flying with them. They're like, hey, when you get that next deal, keep me
Yeah.
posted. And so just a really small, closely held network, but so far it's worked well, and we manage it with a small team. And I don't want to grow too big too fast. I don't want a huge, somewhere around 20 properties is going to be kind of our, it might be plus or minus 4 or 5 from there.
Yeah.
But I feel like with 20 properties, we can manage it with 4 to 5 employees, and we'll recycle out some of those smaller ones. We'll sell over time and take that and buy a bigger one. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can have a portfolio of several $100 million with 20 properties, and
For
to me,
sure.
that's big enough.
Yeah. That sounds like an awesome goal there for sure. Um, listening to your story, your dad obviously was not in the real estate at all. Like that is, like you said, you accidentally kind of came into it. So as he was growing, what gave him the itch to start a business in 1981 to kind of start this oil and gas thing? Where did he come up with that niche? And then as you were growing up, how did you perceive that as a child, your dad owning his own business and kind of working through that? What did that look like to you?
I mean, obviously I'm taking a guess at what was in his mind, but I think like what I've learned now as an adult is everyone knows my dad is, I mean, he's just a total workhorse, right? Dude can still outwork me and he's 26, 27 years older than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got just an insane work ethic. What I've learned now as I've gotten older is he's also like really a perfectionist, like to the point where he micromanages, you know. And I think probably if I had to guess back in the 80s, it was like he saw opportunity out there, but he wanted to do things how he wanted to do it, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
drives him crazy when other people are like trying to tell him how to do something. That would be my guess. I could be way off base. The other piece of it is, right, he grew up in Williston as well, so he was just kind of always around oil. Um, and my dad loves like heavy machinery, right? Bulldozers, excavators, loaders, backhoes. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
He's he, he's just like, it's like a fifth appendage for him. He just jumps in it and away he goes. So he always loved that industry because it's like you're just playing with giant Tonka trunks,
Yeah.
basically. So yeah, that was his, I think, exposure to it. And then my brother and I mean, he started that company a year before I was born, and so that was all we knew. We grew up around it all the time. I mean, we were running tractors and backhoes and stuff, you know, well before we could drive, and so we were
Mm-hmm.
always kind of inclined towards that. And I thought it was an awesome childhood. We grew up out in the country. We lived in a double wide trailer house up until I was in fifth grade. We had 7 acres of land. We had our four-wheelers and, a
Nice.
motorcycle. And we lived right in the hills where we could just take off and, disappear all day, come back when you're hungry.
Yeah.
Um, so we had the best childhood. I was like, people talk about, I feel like most entrepreneurs today, they're all like, oh, I grew up really poor. I didn't know this. I'm like, dude, I think that's so relative. We grew up, I would say middle class. We lived in a trailer house, but outside of that, I'm like, I don't ever feel like we were poor. And even then, like to me, that wasn't poor. I laugh about it now because like once
Mm-hmm.
my parents had their fourth kid, we were squished for room in that trailer house. So my dad and my grandpa, they found a shed somewhere. And keep in mind, we live in northwestern North Dakota. It's cold out, right? They found this shed, and him and his buddies, they like cut a hole in the side of our trailer house and attached the shed to the side of it. And
Instant
that
new bedroom.
that became me and my brother. We lived in the shed. Uh, and it
That's
was
awesome.
cold in there all the time, but I'm like, I don't ever have a memory of like looking back and it's like, oh, I can't believe we live in a trailer. Like, we weren't embarrassed about it. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
man, what an awesome. I wouldn't have traded our childhood for anything. So, um, I think our kids lose perspective now, and that's like, as a parent, you struggle with that. It's like, yeah, yeah, you always want to give your kids a better life than you have. But I'm like, I feel like my childhood was so awesome. It's hard to top that. And like
Yeah.
now we fill ours in, but our kids are like, they're spoiled, man. I think our 3-year-old's been out of the country 6 different times. Our older ones, obviously, a lot more than that. I mean, I'm a pilot, so they've got to fly in private planes. Our 2 year
Mm-hmm.
old or our 2 week old that's with me here, she just got her first private plane ride today. We flew from North Dakota down to Georgia. She's already been out camping in an RV. I'm like, dude, you
Nice.
guys have no idea like what they're growing up with. And that's where, as a parent, I'm like, we're very conscientious about not spoiling them and about letting them know that they have to live with a responsibility from growing up, with wealth.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say we're wealthy, but we're well off compared to, 99.9% of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Um,
sure.
and that's why when we travel, a lot of times we travel to South America a lot. We've had them in Central America, and it's like, I think it gives them a healthy perspective on how hard some people have it.
For sure. Yeah. I think
So,
that, you're by far not the first person to talk about, the amazing childhood, and it had nothing to do with money. It had everything to do with the relationships they had, the things they were able to do, the freedom that they had. And I try to piece that together in my brain, as I sit here and try to build out what I continually want to provide to my kids, and where do I want to bring it, and how, what level of financial success do we want, and all of these different things. And it's like, man, oh man, like none of that in the grand scheme of things is really what matters. Like, you loved your childhood because you had the freedom to explore life, see what was going on out there, check things out. And that's where, like, I look back on my childhood and think to myself, man, I rode thousands of miles on my bicycle, like thousands of miles. And it was amazing. Like, we did not come from any sort of money whatsoever. And I was going all the time. Like, I was always traveling, always having fun, always driving around all over. The only thing I felt like I wish I could have had more of was family time. But, when you have two working parents, and, it is what it is. You come home from school and, well, homework's done. So off I go. I'm out on my bike, or I'm grabbing my BB gun and rolling out into the woods, or doing whatever,
right.
It's just what it was. But, how is that, you already talked about it a little bit, but, what sort of, if any, like, actual thought process, you and your wife sitting down, like, hey, like, how do we want our children's childhood to look? Like, how do we want to craft this? What are the things that we really want to value as a family and show that to the kids? Like, what are those types of things that hit home for you and your wife?
I think the hardest, like most complex thing to do is to raise another human, right?
Yeah.
And what's wild to me is like to to be a hairstylist, you have to go to school for that, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to get a degree. You have to have annual checks from whoever the hairstylist, inspector is. You have to have all these permits, but it's like, oh, anyone can be a parent,
Yeah.
and no one checks in on us. No one like teaches us, at least where I was. I mean, you don't like have classes on how to raise a good kid, how to
Yeah.
do you talk to your kid about values? Do you let them figure stuff out on their own? Like, it's just this maddening, like, and then right when you think, I'm like, okay, we've had 4 kids, and right around the time we think we're getting good at it, well, they're out of the house, and you never have the chance to do it again, right? Unless,
Yeah.
like, as a grandparent, I mean, you have some knock-on effect, but to me, it's just like, it's just what a weird, like, you know, if I'm going to be a banker, I'm going to be a banker for 40 years. And it's like the better I get at it, the higher I rise. Well, it's like right around the time you're hitting your stride as a parent, it's like, boom, they're gone. So,
Yeah. They're out the door. Yeah. Hopefully
so
you did a good job.
yeah, so I think it's a learning process. And, it's just like anything. You look at the childhood you had, try and take the good things from that, try and take the areas where maybe we had frustrations or think our parents missed the mark, and incorporate that. Like, I feel like my parents, the best thing that they ever did for me was they were just super supportive.
Mm.
It didn't matter how dumb the idea was I had. They're like, okay, yeah, if that's, you want to start a restaurant, they're probably thinking to themselves, like, are you insane? They're like, yeah, like, how can we support you?
Yeah.
We'll be there at your grand opening, we'll give you your loan to get it off the ground. You know, stuff like that. Oh, you want to be a pilot? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You want to ride your motorcycle to South America? They're like, okay, be careful, check in occasionally. Um, sort of me, I'm like, man, what a gift that was, because it allowed
Yeah.
me to figure things out on my own. And that's become key to being an entrepreneur, right? Is like having that ability to work through issues and figure things out without coming to your parents for help.
Yeah.
I've you know, uh, on the flip side, it's like I don't remember anyways, they could have, but I don't remember them ever like talking to me about like values, like core
Mm-hmm.
values or about financial responsibility or anything like that. So we do a lot of that with our kids, right? Like we have our four family core values on a board in our kitchen. We talk to them about it constantly. But on the other hand, what I've noticed now is like my 9-year-old and 7-year-old, when they can't figure something out, they're coming to dad right away. And I don't
Mm.
know if that's normal, but they're like, Dad, I can't. Like my son and I were building a sandbox last night and he was getting frustrated. I'm like, just keep going. I had him running the electric impact driver, like running screws into the
Yeah.
boards, and he kept stripping them out. And I'm like, just stick with it, dude. I'll show
Yeah.
you a little bit, but I feel like kids nowadays, you hear me talking like the old
The
person,
old
but
fogey. Yeah.
they just like they don't have that stickiness and they don't figure things out. And I blame it on like, YouTube shorts and these stupid TikTok videos where it's like 3 seconds of just mind blast and then it's on to the next and it's on to the
Mm-hmm.
next. And you even look at, you listen to Spotify, and it's like all the songs now, it's rare to find a song that's more than 3 minutes long
Yeah.
because people don't have the attention. I'm like
Yeah.
listening to Clint Black, 90s country. And it's like his bangers are 5 minutes long. I'm like, that's a good tune. Or
Yeah.
the 80s
Yeah.
ballads.
For sure. Yeah, my sons
Um,
love listening to all the older music and like the long like they don't really know much of any of the newer music, but so it's kind of interesting to hear some of this. And not only to piggyback on that a little bit, it's not only the length of the song, but it's also the actual words in the song. They repeat the chorus like 4 times, and in the verses that are in between, there's like 7 words in the verse,
right,
and you're like, what creativity did you have here? Like I don't understand
right.
where this came from, but yeah.
Yeah, um, so I don't know. I mean, am I doing it the right way? Did my parents have the better approach? I'm not sure. And I'm like, by the
Yeah.
time I figure it out, it's going to be too late. And
Yeah.
that makes me sad. Um, but for me, like, we do spend time, like I said, talking about values.
Yeah.
I've started with my 9-year-old about, we talk about the 4 different ways you can make money, right? You can be an hourly employee, you can work for a salary, you can be a business owner, or you can be an investor, and that kind of encompasses most of the ways there are to make money.
Hmm.
Or you can marry really well. Um, so like with him now, I've started working through the 4 options, right? Like I'll have him do stuff for me, pay him by the hour. Last summer we had a lawn edging business. He'd go around the neighborhood, offer to, edge lawns, and I'm like, you get $20 per lawn, and it doesn't matter if it's an easy lawn or a hard one
Hmm.
or to edge the sidewalks. I'm like, that's like being salary. Oh, by the
Yeah.
way, now that I'm working for you, you're also a business owner. You're paying me 10 out of the $20 of every yard we do. Um, so we've been talking through that type of stuff a lot. I think it'll pay dividends when they're older, but they're 9, 7, 3. It's kind of hard to tell
Yeah.
right now.
For sure. So I'm curious. I want to jump back to a couple things you said. You'd mentioned like blaming some of the stuff on TikTok. Well, first I'm going to throw it at you and be a jerk about it. Is like, well, don't have your kids on TikTok. Then you don't have to worry about it. But the culture though is one of those that's like, man, it just really does that. So when you mentioned your kids, your 9 and 7-year-old especially, coming in always asking daddy for help, what sort of tasks are they doing, and how do you kind of approach that help? Because I caught myself doing. And this, I'll speak for me first before you answer, is I was doing the same thing, but then I would constantly actually help them, and like not just guide them, I would help them complete the task. And so I was training them to continually come back to me. So I'm curious what your thought is if you were to like reflect back a little bit on the times that you remember your 9 and 7-year-old coming. Are you actually helping them, like physically helping them complete the task, or is it more of a guidance? Like, are you subconsciously training them to come back to you, or are you consciously training them to figure it out on their own?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. And I think so last summer, kind of our value that we were focused on with them was respect. You
Mm-hmm.
respect people, you respect things. Now the last 6 months we've been focused more on grit, and to me, like, guys, you gotta stick with it. I know you can, like that sandbox we were building last night, like we had the fabric, like the landscaping fabric down that we were putting the sand on top of, and like I gave my boy a utility knife, like a razor knife, and he's like trying to cut that fabric. I'm like, hey, don't don't slit your wrist here. But he's like, Dad, I can't get it. Like, I'm like, dude, you got a sharp knife, you can get it. Just
Yeah.
keep. Well, I'm pulling on. I'm like, you got a sharp knife, you'll get it. Just stick with it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be over here shoveling sand. I got the day laborer job. You're the CEO position here. So things like that, where I'm like, there's no reason you can't figure it out. Now, I'm also trying to teach them how to use tools. So there's
Mm-hmm.
some things like, you know, when they're trying to run a bolt in or something and they don't understand, like with a ratchet,
Yeah.
they're like just turning it back and forth and it's not ratcheting. I'm like, you have to hold, the socket until you get some
Yeah.
resist. So there's some things where you have to show them, but it's like after they've done it a few times, I'm like, what do you do when the ratchet's just going back and forth? He's like, oh yeah, I got to hold it. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
good. Now show your sister this. Become the
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
Um,
And they'll learn so much more by teaching. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So you talked about the core values, which I love. I'm a huge proponent of having core values as a family, something that keeps you guys together and focused on the right things. So, how did you guys kind of develop those core values? Where did they come from, and like where did the idea for you guys to create core values as a family come from?
People that you hang out with, like the Go Abundance crew,
Mm-hmm.
some of the podcasts we listen to, just on how guys are focused on it. I mean, we use core values in our business. Sort of me, I'm like, it's insane why we wouldn't be talking about this with our kids as well.
Yeah.
And we try and keep it simple. We have four that kind of my wife and I have developed. And when the kids get older, I think we'll revisit those and be like, is this us? Does this define us?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember who was talking about it. But they're like, there's a difference between aspirational core values and real, like intrinsic
Yeah.
core values, right? And I think a lot of businesses, I would say the core values that are up on their wall are aspirational. It's like, this is who we want to be, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not really intrinsic to who we are.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's okay to have both, but you just have to recognize which are aspirational and which are intrinsic.
How do you kind of apply those core values in whether it's conversation or whatever with your kids? How do you kind of make a tie with the core values to your kids so that they understand the purpose and value of those core values?
So I'll give you an example. To me, like gratitude is, at least in my world, that's the keystone. Right? Like all other, I feel like all good values stem from gratitude, right? Kindness, respect, love, admiration, generosity. Like if you have a grateful heart and you're grateful for the gifts that God's given you, you're more likely to be generous, to be kind, to have respect for people. So I'm like, guys, if we nail this, all the rest are going to seem easy. Um, the inverse is entitlement, to me, is the most poisonous of any attitude you can have. So when I do see my kids acting entitled, we nip that in the bud right away,
Mm-hmm.
and then we talk about it. I'm like, this is not okay, and here's why. For the gratitude, one thing my wife and I talked with our kids maybe less than a month ago is philanthropy and generosity are really important to me,
Mm-hmm.
and to the point of like giving uncomfortably. So we decided that for our kids now, for every year of age they have, probably starting at like 7 years old. We haven't done it with the 3-year-old yet. She's still pooping her pants, so she doesn't get
Just
this
gives a little
yet.
bit of a break, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so the 7-year-old, the 9-year-old, they get $1,000 per year old they are, and they have to donate that to charity. I'm like, you can give it all to one charity. You can spread it out between 10 different charities. We don't care how you do it. We'll help you guys learn about them. We'll expose you to some of them, and you can just decide what you want to do with that. And then we'll try and, as parents, we're going to try and like help them follow up with it. Like, hey, we donated this money. How, let's check in. Let's see what they did with it. Or do you still feel good about that 6 months later? So, like next week, I have an appointment set up at the homeless shelter in Fargo, where we live. A buddy of mine runs it, and it's like I think it's a men's only homeless shelter, but it's focused on like rehabilitating some of these guys and doing it in a loving Christian way. And so like I want to have our kids down there and part of it, so so they can see that those that are less fortunate, what they're having to struggle with, the mental issues, the drug abuse, the bad luck, whatever it may be. And it's like, we have a duty and an obligation to help, and again, it goes back to gratitude. You guys, be grateful that we have this money, that we're just stewards of it. We don't own this, right? It's just being passed through us. We're a conduit. So we're going to take them there next week. They're in the Dolly Parton book club. So that's one that we're going to talk to them about, is like, you've gotten all these books since you were born from the Dolly Parton book club. You love these books. Is this an organization you'd love to give to? I'm on the board for an orphanage down in Bogota, Colombia. So we've had our kids down there 2-3 times at the orphanage. Exposed them to that. So we're just trying little by little, without like, you can't overwhelm them when they're that age, and they don't know what $7,000 or $9,000 is, but they know like how hard they have to work to get a $10 allowance. So when they see this money, they're like, wow, this is this is insane. I'm like, good. I want you to think like that. And by the time you're 18 years old, you're going to have $18,000 a year. And as we're setting up our trust, after they turn 18, that doubles every year. So when they're 19, they'll have $38,000 a year. I'm like, dude, that's probably more money than you're going to make as a young adult.
Yeah, no joke.
And you're going to be forced to give this away. And I want you to do that, because that will teach them that money is fleeting, right? So I don't know. I could be like, this could be a massive disaster later on in life, but it's just, it's something I feel good about. So
how did you come up with this concept? I love the thought process. I mean, it's, as I sit here and think about the fact that you just had your 4th kid as well, it's like, man, oh man, when you have 4 of them that are 7 and older, right? I mean, that's going to be a pretty hefty chunk of your, a pretty hefty chunk of money every year going out the door. How did you come up with this idea, and like, why is it that, well, you already had the why is that it's so important, but let's just stick with how you came up with this thought process.
I don't know. I think I've just been building on it again, probably from talking to some of the GoBundance guys on what they're doing. They had a family wealth episode that they did, and so I took some good ideas from there. I've read books on trust planning, estate planning, because I've been trying to help my parents do it. David York, he's an estate planning guy out in Idaho, in Utah, and they asked some really good questions on like, we shouldn't just dump a pile of money in our kids' laps at some random point when you just happen to die, and it's like, boom, all of a sudden you gave your kids this money without teaching them how to be good stewards of it. So I think it's, just taking a bunch of ideas and like, how can I start teaching them some of these concepts and ramp it up over time, again, to the point of uncomfortableness.
Especially when you add in the, going to the orphanage, and you add in the food kitchen and that type of stuff. I think it's a phenomenal way to help them kind of ground themselves into the understanding of how fortunate they are, and how blessed they are, and like, well done on you. I really like that a lot. So as you're growing the business out, I'm going to pivot a tiny bit. As you're growing the business out, and you're sitting here saying, okay, well, I want my kids to be giving away money. I want them to understand that that's, it's a tool. We're just a conduit. But you still want to grow the business to be rather large, have a couple $100 million worth of a couple $100 million portfolio, kind of grow this out. How do you talk to your kids about the actual business side of the house as well? I mean, obviously at 9 and 7, your two oldest, there's only so much. My two oldest are 10 and 6, so I'm totally understanding where you're at, but just kind of curious, what sort of conversations do you have with them about business and what you do and how they're even able to give $9,000 away this year? How does that go for you?
Yeah, so far, as far as the kids know, like their dad's a pilot for the most part, right? Like that's something that they can see, that they can touch, and so they're like, because I still fly a little bit part-time for companies as like a contract pilot. So like to them, that's more tangible. It's more real. It's like, oh, dad's flying airplanes today. Um, on the real estate side of things, once in a while, like as we're driving around town, I'm like, that's one of the buildings that we own, and they're like, oh, that's cool. It doesn't really mean anything to them. Um, but yeah, I think, again, going through those four different ways to make money, the investor level to me is like that's kind of the pinnacle of where that's how I want to live, I mean, believe me, there's a lot of days where I just like fantasize. I'm like, oh, life would be so easy if I could just like get a W-2 and like do a 2-page long tax return or whatever the hell, do it on QuickBooks in 10 minutes and
Yeah,
not
no
have
kidding.
to, so I don't say it's the best way, but it's the best way for me is like getting to that investor level. And I think, over the next few years, talking to them more about that. And I think it's cool the guys that have, bought a house with their kids
Yeah.
and like had them work in that. I don't have any desire to like own residential real estate, but I think it's very possible that at some point when my kids are, young teenagers, that we buy a building and have them part of that process and,
Yeah.
you know, part of the bookkeeping piece of it and part of like, hey, so and so called and this is broken, what are we going to do? They stop paying rent. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And just like having them part of that process.
For sure. Yeah, I think that the inclusion of at least seeing that sort of stuff is phenomenal. I mean, I love that my kids get to hear the conversations that I have and see the different things. And there's another guy I interviewed, a guy, same boat as you, as I can't remember his name. I want to say it was Nate, and now I can't remember his last name, but he had talked about how, his kids, after they buy an apartment building, he'd be like, yeah, you owned like this, the doorknob on this room, right? So this apartment number, so they can walk by and see their doorknob that they own, just something that because they have a small ownership percentage and everything. So it's like, hey, this is a little bit more tangible. Yes, it's a small amount, but it's yours, and this is something that's like tangibly yours that you own, that somebody else is paying to use. So every time somebody opens that door, they're paying you to use the handle on that door. So it was fun to just kind of have that conversation. So I'm listening to you talking, like I said, oh yeah, those 4 square feet in that corner over there where that pile of metal is, that's your 4 square feet. Like you own those 4 square feet. Like, it's just a cool little thing for the kids to be able to see. And my son today even asked me, I don't remember where we were driving somewhere, and he was like, Dad, when are we going to buy those vending machines? I've been talking about this for over a year, these vending machines. And it's been delayed multiple times for various different reasons. And now it's mostly delayed because we're going to be starting our RV trip later on this year. And it's like, well, I can't have a route of vending machines sitting around that I can't actually go service. So, but he was like, man, I really want to do something. So I'm failing him miserably on that front as far as actually getting him involved in business, because he's asking me about it and he's wanting to do it. And I'm sitting here like not being successful in bringing it in. But yeah, I love the concept of them being able to see their doorknob or their 4 square feet or their whatever and have that tangible understanding. When you got married to your wife, what sort of conversations did you guys have as far as like business, raising kids? Like, did you guys have some of those conversations before you got married, like to prep yourselves and understand what your guys' goals were? Or was it all mostly, we talk about it as it comes?
No, I think we did. I mean, that was like, on our very first date.
In the sleigh ride or in the
Not
plane?
not on
Like,
the
what's
sleigh
it?
ride. The very first one. That was like the second date. Um, Before the plane ride, after the Arby's. No, but that was like what attracted me to her right away was or her to me was just like the conversation that we could like we had a several hour long dinner and just like easy conversation flowed.
Yeah.
So obviously we weren't talking about kids or life goals at that point, but we've always had pretty good, deep, rich conversation. Like, and then we're both Catholic, so part of like one of the things that the Catholic Church really does well is like the marriage prep,
Yeah.
where like you go through a several, I don't know, like a 6 week long course where they're asking you a lot of these hard questions that people
Hmm.
fight about later in life. And then we, had a couple of meetings with the priest, and he's like, hey, based on what you guys are talking about, money could be an issue for you later in life because you care about it, you don't. Like, it's more important to you, less to you. These are conversations you need to have now before you get married because, especially as a Catholic, like we don't like seeing divorce, right? This
Yeah.
isn't a decision to make lightly. So we talked about a lot of that before we were married. And then, I just had a conversation on a date here with her a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, I think the one thing that I've really enjoyed about my wife is like, we're both really driven to keep growing, right? It doesn't mean like financially necessarily, but just we're always learning, always reading about
Hmm.
things. And I think like as long as you're both leveling up together, even if it's at a different pace, it's like it's important because I met a friend of mine for drinks a few weeks ago, and like it wasn't that profound, but it just somehow hit me where he had just got divorced from his wife. They were like high school sweethearts, had been together for 20 years, have a few kids, and he's like, I think the problem, like what his words were, like the problem was that I'm social, I'm extroverted. He's got a very successful business. His wife was staying at home, and like she just like that was her comfort zone. She didn't want to go out and
Yeah.
talk to anyone. She didn't like have any desire to like grow or do anything. And she's like, you can do that, even staying at home. It's like, be studying Spanish or do something. And he's like,
Hmm.
I feel like we just kind of grew apart over time because I'm not the same guy I was 20 years ago, and she wanted to stay kind of that same woman that she was from 20 years ago. And so I was like, man, that's something I couldn't have recognized in my wife, when we first started dating 17, 18 years ago. It's like, it's hard to nail that in the beginning. Like, hey, is this someone that's going to keep growing
Hmm.
their whole life? And so, part of it is I just lucked out. I found a good woman, and she just happens to be driven to keep getting better at whatever it is she's working on. And so I've really respected that.
Awesome. I think that it helps though also that you guys have a core belief system that kind of seems to drive you. If you guys are both Catholic and you went through all of the steps in the Catholic Church to kind of get married in the Catholic Church, even though I can harass you later about being Catholic, but it's
Yeah.
it's a very North Dakotan from that's Catholic. I don't believe, right? I've got a cousin of mine from North Dakota that's a priest now. So, and he's a priest out in North Dakota, back somewhere in southern North Dakota. I don't remember where it's at, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. But when you have that core belief system embedded in both of you already, like that's a good place to start, and at least know that you have some sort of a framework to go back to
Yeah.
that is fighting in the same direction, at least. I have a slightly separate question, so I wanted to pass that back over to you to see if you had any comments on that thought process.
No.
The core belief system side. Okay. So I'm curious on the Catholic side of the house, because I'm not Catholic. My mom was born and raised Catholic in North Dakota, like I told you on our previous podcast / conversation. But I've always been curious. I've got friends of mine who are Catholic and they get divorced, and then you have to go through and like get the annulment, and then the Catholic Church kind of says, hey, yeah, you guys weren't, like, we'll officially annul you because you
Yeah.
weren't actually we're not going to call this an actual, and I'm going to be butchering this, so maybe this is where you're just helping me kind of understand something differently. Is like, hey, we're approving the annulment because it seems as though you guys shouldn't have been married to begin with. So now we can annul it, so you can actually get married to somebody else inside the Catholic Church and have a real marriage. Is kind of the way it feels. Like, is that actually the way that works, or are you aware of how that actually goes down in the Catholic Church?
Yeah, I don't know like all the intricacies. I've talked to a couple of people that have went through it, and it's like it's a process, it's
Yeah.
like it takes a year or more of like going through this. And I don't know, like there's so many things. I'm probably not the greatest Catholic. There's so many things that I just don't understand. And, like a lot of 20 some year olds, like I drifted away from religion,
Hmm.
quite a bit through my 20s. But now that over the last 10, 15 years, I think I think just Christianity, and I'm sure you could say this about most religions, is like if you don't have the context, none of it makes sense to me,
Yeah.
right? Like I hear things almost daily now about not even specific to Catholicism, but just Christianity in general. I'm like, oh, that's why they did that. And sometimes it just like it takes like sitting down with a priest or
Yeah.
some scholar that once they explain like, this happened because 1900 years ago in Rome when the emperor was doing it, and it's like they put the historical, it's like, oh, I get it now,
Yeah.
and I think with the annulment, I don't know specifically on that, but I'm sure it's something like over the course of a year when you go through this and it's like you're atoning the right way. And I don't think they say like it never happened. I mean, there's some annulments, right, where it's like, oh, I got drunk in Vegas. Oops. That's probably different than being married to someone for 30 years, having four
Yeah.
kids, somehow being able to get it annulled. And maybe it may, you look back at some of the stuff where you used to be able to like pay for indulgences, right? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I can go do whatever I want and just pay for an indulgence and get out of it. And now we look back at that like 600 years later and you're like, what? How does that make sense? So there's probably a little bit of both of that going on.
Yeah. No kidding. I should ask my priest cousin and try to get a little bit more understanding on that, just because it'd be fun conversation. Because I enjoy that type of conversation, anyways. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I went back so recently, last year. Well, maybe it was like 2 years ago at this point. My uncle, one of my uncles, passed away. My mom is the youngest of 12, and a majority of them are still up in North Dakota. But one of the uncles living out in Bismarck had passed away, and so I went up there for the funeral, and it was the father of the priest. The father of the father, right?
Yeah.
So the priest, my cousin, had actually done like he did the funeral for his father, and I was like, golly, like what I could not imagine, but he did such a phenomenal job and going through it, and just standing up there doing like I could not imagine going through the process of burying my father as the pastor or priest standing up in the front, and I was like, that's just well done on him. And then we all afterwards went to this tiny little, like the only bar in Bismarck, sat down and had a drink at the bar, and it was including the priest. So it was an interesting experience to be able to kind of go through that and go through the Catholic funeral, and like what it was fun also to tie into cousins that I remember going to their farm when I was younger, and they had like this. Like one of those 55-gallon drum barrels, like the metal ones, and you tie the ropes to it and make like a little bucking bronco out of it.
Yeah.
And that same cousin, the priest, had busted his tooth on the front of the barrel. He was riding it, bam, broke his tooth in half. Went to bring him up to the house, but like it was just fun to go back and like go through all of that, all those stories again. Talking to my cousins, the youngest one of that family. There was 3 boys, and I was like, I don't barely even remember you. Like, holy gracious, because I've got so many cousins that I've never even talked to. So, anyways, that's a massive tangent on that point. But so after you guys were in Denver and Aspen, how did you guys end up deciding to go back to Fargo? Obviously, you went to UND, so that's there. So what was the decision to go back to Fargo for you guys?
So we actually I don't even remember what year it was. I was on an international plane flight somewhere. I think I was coming back from Asia or something, and I watched that movie, The Motorcycle Diaries. Have you ever seen it?
Yep.
It's like
Yeah, sure
it's all
have. Yeah.
subtitled.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, someday I'm gonna
Talking
do
about
that.
Che. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Someday I'm gonna ride my motorcycle. Like I think he rode from Argentina north.
Hmm.
But I was just like, there was just like a romance in that to me, like being out on the road. And so in 2011, I'd been percolating this idea for several years, and I kept telling, we were just dating at the time. I kept telling my girlfriend, I'm like, I'm gonna do this. She's like, yeah, 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 sounds like a good idea. Sounds awesome. And then when like the time came, it was February 2011. I'm like, okay, now like I'm going. I bought the bike, $3,000, bought a used bike, worked on it for like 2 weeks, and got it all ready. And like the day came, I remember it was February 11th, 2011. Like I was supposed to leave 2 days before, and Denver got hit with a massive blizzard.
Hmm.
And she's like, oh, okay, he's not gonna go or buy myself some
Yeah.
more time. I'm like, hell no. That like as soon as they had the roads plowed, I had 8 layers of clothes, and I got on my bike and I took off down the interstate heading south. Um, and this is a long answer to probably a simple question, but so for about the first 3 months, I rode all the way through Central America by myself, shedding layers of clothes as I went,
Hmm.
of
Of
course.
course.
Um, and then in April, so I left February. In April, my youngest sister flew into Costa Rica. I picked her up at the airport. She rode with me for 2 weeks down to Panama.
Nice.
Um, and then she flew out the same day. Jermaine, my wife, she flew into Panama, and we rode around Panama for like another week. Put the bike on a sailboat. We sailed to Colombia around the Darien Gap there. And then when we disembarked in Colombia, that was late May, early June, and we rode basically, all over South America, and ended up selling the bike in Argentina and flew home on Christmas Eve so we could spend
Wow.
Christmas with the family. And anyways, so our point of that trip, or at least my point, I don't know if she was ever fully on board. It's probably one of the things we didn't talk about in depth enough, was like I've always wanted to live overseas. So we're like, hey, we'll spend a year traveling around, see where it feels like home, and we'll live there for 2, 3, 4 years, and then we'll come back to the US. Travel like that is a lot different than going on vacation to these
Yeah,
same
for sure.
places for the obvious reasons. I mean, but dude, it's hard. It's like I know it sounds pithy to say, but it's like a job when you have to get
Yeah.
up every day, and it's like you're grinding, especially when you move a lot. We weren't staying places for a month at a time. It was the longest we probably ever stayed put in one place was like 3 days. So
Hmm.
you're constantly in a new town, constantly meeting new people, and like trying to figure out how to get places. And the motorcycle's breaking down on the side of the interstate in Lima, Peru, or it's
Yeah.
broke down up in the mountains, on a gravel road 50 miles from a village. And um, so after, traveling that way for whatever, 10, 11 months, I mean, we're both just like burnt out almost. And like the thought of then just like settling down and picking a country and living in, I was like, wow, that sounds even more exhausting. So
Yeah.
we're like, maybe the right play is let's go back to the US. We'll make money for a few years, and then we can always come back down to South America.
Yeah.
So um so we decided to move back. We knew we didn't want to live in a big city again. I'd been living in LA, kind of had a short stint in New York. Then we had been in Denver for a few years. I'm like, let's go somewhere smaller. So North Dakota was comfortable. We just toured around Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck. We looked out at like Kalispell, Missoula, and yeah, Fargo just was a good fit for us at the time. And then, you start having kids and it gets harder and harder to leave. So
Yeah.
so I haven't haven't executed on my goal yet of living overseas, but we travel quite a bit.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that the travel is we've lived overseas multiple times, but the government sent us places, right? So like we lived in Japan for 3 years, lived in Korea for a year, I've lived all over the place, right? But it's a whole different world when you've got your kids and you're dragging them around and you're kind of like, okay, life is just very different and you have to manage things so differently. And but the travels I love to do regardless. I was still, part of me would love to go live overseas again, not government forced,
Right.
but something that we go and enjoy and go do. But yeah, I love that you guys are still doing that and making that part of who you are. The motorcycle diary thing, I think it's like when I watched that movie as well, I was like, boy, that would be so awesome because I love riding my motorcycle. I love being all over the place and go travel to places. And maybe when the kids are out of the house, if my back can handle it by that age, that all right, let's go do it, dear. And me and my wife will go and jump on it and go make it happen. But that's awesome.
It's so funny. That was like perspective. So before I left on that trip, I had my wife watch that with me, and she's like, why in the hell would this make you want to go ride? Mom, this looks miserable. Are you freaking insane? I'm like, what? So this is just like, Mars and Venus.
Yeah, no
But
kidding.
yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah. And when you just mentioned Bismarck again, it made me realize that was not Bismarck, where we drove through Bismarck to get to their house where my uncle's funeral was. But now I can't remember what the little town was, but itty bitty little place. But anyways, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Out in the middle of nowhere, like a one horse town for sure. It used to be a little bit more going on, but not anymore. But all right. So with the business side of the house, you talked about wanting to grow that a little bit more and kind of build it up to be a larger portfolio, but still only not an overwhelming amount of doors or square footage. So what is it that you're trying to change now to be able to make that happen? How are you looking at kind of the market, because it's been going a little crazy? I come from like the apartment investing side of the house, and that's. We're listening to a call Go Abundance did recently, and my wife and I were talking about deals that I've been a part of and deals that I've tried to avoid. And I kept trying to underwrite deals that would make sense, and I just couldn't do it. I could not find deals that made sense, and all these people around me were buying them, and now I'm seeing all these people that their deals are falling apart, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, was I like, when it was happening, I was like, man, I'm super stingy, and like this, like what is going on? I'm failing to buy all these things, and I felt terrible, and now I'm seeing all these things fall apart, and I'm like, okay, maybe I was doing the right thing. What has life been like for you in the industrial side of the house? Has it been similar to where it was like the rates have like kind of killed some things, and like people are going crazy on prices and all this stuff, or has industrial been kind of pretty steady since you kind of jumped into it in the 2012 range?
Well, this is me being greedy, but for the longest time, I felt like I was just playing in my own sandbox, because I was like, at 2012 through 2021, probably 2022, I didn't know another person in their 20s or 30s that was buying industrial, right? Like everyone was either in single family homes or doing multifamily deals. And I was just like sitting back there quietly, picking up pretty good assets, I thought.
Yeah.
And again, not as sexy as like multifamily, and you don't always have like the ability to accelerate or force your equity as quickly. But for me, it was just really comfortable. Translate that to today, we're still finding what I think are really good deals. You can find buildings out there with a multi-billion-dollar tenant with 6, 7, 8 years left on the lease and buy it at a 9 cap. I'm like, I feel good about that.
Yeah.
And so we're still buying slowly. We bought a 200,000 square foot building a couple of months ago. We have a 50,000 square foot one under contract right now, which I think this, is probably going to fall apart, but it's on the seller that they just can't get their lease documents in order. So we're still selectively buying, but I'm just, I try not to force it, because I know what you were hinting at. And it's like, sometimes you just like, you don't know what it is, but when you've been doing it long enough, it's like the hair on the back of your neck stands up a little bit and you're like, I don't know, I feel like I'm pushing harder than I need to,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, and then you got that devil on the one shoulder and the angel on the other, and it's like, oh, you're just, you're being apathetic, you're being lazy, is because you don't want it bad enough, right?
Yeah.
If you want it, you're gonna 10x, Grant Cardone. You just got to 10x this and go bigger, go harder. And the other side of me is like, I don't know, like something's telling me when it's a good time and when it's not. And
Yeah.
I've, just like you, it's like the best deals I've ever done are the ones that I didn't buy, where I just look back, I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord, for like, whispering in my ear or
Yeah.
whatever that was that made me not do that deal. Um, I mean, there's certainly a couple too where I'm like, I should have just paid the 50 grand more that the guy was asking because I probably lost a million. But you know what? At the end of the day, Adam, like I sleep with a good sound mind that
Hmm.
we're not over leveraged, we're not risky. You know, I'm in most cases I'm using I have my money in every deal, but I also have my family's money in every deal.
Yeah.
And my partners in the other deals, like I said, I love them like family. My biggest fear is like losing someone else's money.
Yeah.
So we're just extremely careful, try and do a good job. We try and communicate. And it's like, and one of the things I communicate is like, hey, at some point, something's going to go wrong. And
Hmm.
believe me, I'm going to feel awful about it. But you can also believe me, I'm going to work my butt off to try and fix it. Right? I don't know when it's going to happen or which property, but it's like things go wrong. And if someone
Yeah.
acts like they don't, they're lying to you, you should be
No
running
joke.
the other way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I know it's going to happen. It has happened on, one of our big family properties. It almost like brought our company to our knees back in 2017. And, we fought like hell for 3 years and turned it around. Now it's our most valuable property. It's
Nice.
like things happen and you got to deal with it. And you got to keep communicating with people and not stuff your head in the sand.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's always the biggest part. And I talk to people about that in business. I talk to people about that in marriage, like communication, communication, communication. It doesn't get better with it doesn't get better with time. Like just talk about it now, get it over with. Like, let's figure it out. Whether it's your investors and they really just need to hear what's actually happening on the deal and why something went south, and or if it's in your marriage and you're like, hey, this thing is bothering me, or I screwed up on this thing, like just go and talk about it. It doesn't like communication has to be the number one, and that's something I talk about constantly on that front. So
Right. Well,
I love hitting that drum.
it's like, what are the three hardest words to say to your wife? It's not "I love you," it's "I was wrong."
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
truly, like as men, as business owners, as fathers, it's like who- people, they put you up on a pedestal, and it's like we're scared to death to seem weak. And
yeah.
you're a career military guy. You got a big sweet beard. Like it's hard to say like I'm wrong,
That's because I
right?
never am.
Like,
That's why it's hard to say. I
well,
don't
I
lie.
know.
So,
Well, hey,
just,
there's there's probably some truth in that lie. Uh, so
yeah.
yeah,
No, it is very difficult. And it's something that I try to teach the kids too, is being able to say that and admit when you're wrong and being like, get down on their level. Literally, I'll get down on a knee and apologize to them if I screw something up, chat with them about how poorly I behaved. And let them know that it, like, saying that you are wrong and saying that you apologize for something is a good thing. That is okay. Like, that's something we need to be able to do, regardless. And that is going to make my two boys better men by being able to do that. And my little girl, it's going to make her a better woman to be able to do that. So I want to be able to show that. So if I'm not showing it, then I'm not teaching it, it's part of life.
well, and I would say one other thing with our business too, like I feel like we have a few advantages, but one of them definitely is that we just run really light, light
Mm-hmm.
overhead. It's like, it's me, my wife is a CPA accountant. She's like whip smart. So
Nice.
she does some of our internal accounting. And then we've got an accounting team that everything eventually flows up through. So there's no shenanigans. But the rest of our team, they're all based in South America, Colombia, Brazil. And so it's like we don't have a lot of overhead. I don't
Yeah.
need, like, I've seen too many companies get in trouble because it's like you have to keep doing deals to feed the beast,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes the beast is overhead. It's like we need
Yeah.
transactions so that we can make payroll, or we need transactions to support our lifestyle. I don't have a lot of overhead. My lifestyle is paid for, right?
Yeah.
And I also don't have like an ego that makes me think that I need to do something, because it's like that's one thing I've learned from studying Warren Buffett. It's like the hardest thing to do sometimes is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not good at doing nothing. I get in a lot
Yeah.
of trouble when I do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When I take days off from work, it's expensive for me because I'm like in the sporting goods store, like, oh, I'll just go kill a couple
Yeah.
hours walking around here. And it's like you walk out and, spent too much money. And so, so it's hard for me. But for me, it's like our business, it's like owning a vehicle, right? You don't own a vehicle just to drive it. You own it to get to your destination. And the same way
Yeah.
with the business, it's like I shouldn't have a business if I'm in the business of just like doing deals. That's dangerous. You're gonna lose someone's money for them. So it's like, what is the purpose of our business? Our purpose is like, I want to build a lifestyle for me and my family, and for the people that trust us with
Mm-hmm.
their money, to help them have passive income, where it's like, hey, the guys that work for me, it's like in South America, one's getting ready to leave for Spain for 3 weeks, one's going to Bolivia for 3 weeks. I'm like, this is awesome. I love that you
Yeah.
guys can travel, right? That's important to all of us that work in our company. Like, we all love to travel, we love to adventure. Um, you know, my wife and I included, but it's like, what's the purpose of our company? And it's like, it's not to make money, it's to provide us and others with this lifestyle. And that goes for our employees too. And it's like,
Yeah.
we, same like we're doing with our kids, we're giving each of the people that I work with $2,000 per year to donate to whatever. And doesn't even have to be a nonprofit. It's like you can donate it to some organization in Colombia or in Brazil. And again, $2,000 for, a remote worker is
Yeah.
substantial. That can go a long ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are, again, probably a long-winded answer, but that's why I don't worry so much about, like, is the market up, is it down? It's like there's always going to be good deals out there. There's going to be great deals. It's hard to spot them. It's hard to get pissed when you miss one, but sometimes you don't know for 3, 4, 8 years if it
Yeah.
was a good or a bad deal. And so it's like, just be selective, make sure you can sleep well at night, and don't I don't need to get to $200 million next year. I
Yeah.
don't care if I ever get there, quite honestly. It's like, just do what feels natural.
Yeah. And that's, you said be selective. And I try to harp on that with folks all the time. Is like, part of my selectivity is knowing what metrics I need to hit, what parameters I want each of my properties to hit. And if it doesn't hit those, then don't select it, right? Like, be disciplined in your being selective, right? Like, if you're wise and you have your numbers and you know the purpose and you know what your goal is, then it's easy to say no to a deal that's not a good deal because it doesn't meet what your goals are. So say no to it and move on. We did that with a house that we were actually renting a house up in Virginia when we lived there. And I told the owner, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be looking around for a house. I'd like to buy a house that I could rent out when I leave. And I had my parameters. I want to be able to rent it out for X amount of money, like blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, you could buy the house for, this amount. And I was like, I don't think I'll be able to rent it to be able to make the money. So I appreciate it, but I'm going to keep looking. And then by the time we left, the house across the street sold for 50% more than what he offered to sell the house to me for. And I was like, son of a gun. Like I was so angry, but then I look back at it and I look at my wife and I said, but for the same reason I said no to that, I said no to so many other deals that have completely fallen apart because I know that what my numbers, where I want them to be and what I need them to look like. And if they don't look like that, then I don't want to buy it. Does it hurt once in a while? Does that one still hurt me today? Yes, it does. And that was 5 years ago. He offered me that house, and I'm like, it still bothers me 5 years later. But you have your principles, you stick with them, and be selective with what you're doing.
Well, the example I gave you earlier, of like, I should have probably spent 50,000 more, and I mean that happened to me 6 months ago. I underbid something by $100,000, and I just had a conversation with that same broker, and the building sold for $1 million more than what I offered.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but is my life worse today than it would have been? I'm like, not really. You just got to put it in a perspective. It's if you can't like live with the consequences of like missing out on that money, if that's going to eat you up, you're probably in the wrong game.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons I stopped doing the stock market for a long time, because I was so emotionally driven by it that I couldn't handle eating things. It was like I knew that I should be looking at things for long term, but my emotion couldn't handle it. So I was like, no, that's actually how I ended up getting into real estate, was because I couldn't emotionally handle the stock market ups and downs. Like I got so anxious with it. So, find what fits well with your demeanor. I love it. Well, Nathan, it's been absolutely awesome having this long conversation with you. What other things did you want to, as we're getting close to kind of wrapping up, is there anything that you really wanted to discuss, or anything that popped up that you're like, hey, I wanted to come back to that or hit on something that we haven't covered yet?
I think a lot about why, right? I feel like too often in business we're always talking about how, like, how did you, and we've been hitting on why pretty well. So I really appreciate the conversation, but people are always focused on like, how did you grow this? How did you get started? How, and I'm like, why are you doing that? And like we said, it's for the lifestyle. For me, it's like, it's about fueling your passions, right? And your passion isn't like what you do, right? Like people are passionate about golf. I'm passionate about like overland motorcycle riding. I'm passionate about traveling with my family. But your passion to me isn't like, it's not what you do. It's how does that make you feel? And it's like, what's that feeling that I'm craving, right? To me, it's like that sense of adventure. I always joke that I was born like 250 years too late. I'm like, those explorers in like the early 1720s, like, landing in the Caribbean and like uncharted islands. I'm like, oh, that would be so cool. I mean, forget about the scurvy and the gangrene and all this stuff. I'm like, man, that would have been the life. And so to me, like, I'm just passionate about finding adventure, and also like on a more civil scale, just with helping people. Right. Like that's one thing, working with a business coach and therapist for the last year. I think he's kind of got at the core of that with me. He's like, what drives you is I like to be a helper. I'm the oldest of, 4 kids in our family, and I feel like I need to take care of my siblings. I like being there when people call. I say yes. And sometimes I do it to the detriment of my own wife and kids, because I'm like, they're like, why are you always doing these things? That's like, I don't know. I feel like I need to say yes to people, and I probably need to get better at saying no, but it's just like, that's it. Like, it's so intrinsic to me, is like to be that person, because that's part of my passion. Is like, I like helping people. I like having adventures. I like seeking out, new relationships. I'm very introverted, but I love like having, a few friends and being very deep with them. Right.
Yeah.
A mile deep and an inch wide. And so, that's me, man. You probably know more about me than 80% of the people. So
yeah, there we go. And then the 4 people that listen to this will know more about you too. So very good.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably be good buddies by then. Me and those 4. So.
Oh, well, hello. I got a little lady joining me. Oh, can you say hi?
You just made this podcast so much cuter.
Yeah, you did.
You are adorable.
Can you say hi? No, you don't want to? No? How was your nap? I just want your blankie. Yeah. Blankie and thumb.
Pretty dark eyes that just stare right through you.
So, yeah. Yeah, very much so. Beautiful like your mama.
You're a lucky guy.
That I am. But Nathan, it was absolutely phenomenal to get to know you a little bit deeper and chat with you some more. I'm looking forward to the next time, and hopefully maybe even visit you up in North Dakota. If I go see family up in Fargo, then I know that I have somebody else to go chat with as well. So, and if you're ever down in the Tampa area, let me know.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
If folks are hearing you and they want to get a hold of you for one reason or another, maybe they have a property they want to sell you. Maybe they would love to get to know you a little bit more on the investment side. What's the best way for folks to be able to reach out to you?
So I am not really on social media. So if you find me on Facebook or Instagram, do not send me anything because you'll probably hear from me in 2026. But just go to our website, blacktailcompanies.com.
Blacktailcompanies.com. Okay.
Yeah, you can just email me through that, or Nathan@blacktailcompanies.com is my email.
Awesome.
That's probably the best way.
All right. Well, we'll have that stuff in the show notes. The boys just came in and left now, too. They didn't get on camera, surprisingly. So, but thank you again, Nathan, for jumping on. We'll have that in the show notes, blacktailcompanies.com, Nathan@blacktailcompanies.com. So, Nathan, thank you. Everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us. If let us know in your comments what your favorite part of the conversation was. What was your least favorite part of the conversation? What would you like to push back on? I'd love to battle with you guys in the comments. But thank you again, everybody, for listening. Please like and subscribe. Oh, Nathan's got something else.
I will say you gave me a little bit of heck for TikTok. I would not allow my kids on TikTok. They keep asking me when they can get a phone. I said probably when you're 20, maybe 22.
Yeah.
So they're not on TikTok.
Good.
YouTube Shorts are not allowed.
Just the way that you mentioned it made it sound like your kids were watching TikTok. So it's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Yeah. So okay, good.
I think that's
good
just
on
our
you.
culture.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong at all. Yeah. But yeah, stay off the TikTok nonsense. No, thank you, China. But we'll see everybody later. Thank you very much again, Nathan. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see everybody on the next show. Oh, Diana saying bye.
Bye, sweetie.
Say bye again.
Bye. Next time she can interview me.
Yeah, no joke. It'll be a much more fun and beautiful interview, that's for sure.
All right. See you, brother.
Later.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.